Okay folks, Happy New Year, welcome back. We are going to start plant reproduction. So again, just to remind you, 5 plant chapters. They have to ask plants in some way, shape or form. It could be a full question and they'll take different parts out of it. So we're going to do the sexual reproduction of plants. So before we start this, I would just like you to have a look at this screen, and can you remind yourself, asexual reproduction, what was the definition for it, or what was the things we did when we did cell division, cell continuity? What's the characteristics of the parents? What type of offspring do you make? Do you use mitosis or meiosis to do it? And similarly for sexual reproduction. So pause, have a think about it, scribble somewhere, and we will then move on to the next activity. So here, this is different parts of a flower. You should know them from junior cycle. We are working off page 174, at least of my book. You may be a page or two either side of me. Can you decide what these things are, and could you come up with a function for them? So please try it, pause, and then restart when you're ready. So hopefully you've taken the time to figure out what do I know about sexual and asexual reproduction, and you have come up with the conclusions that in sexual reproduction you have to have 2 parents, whereas you only have 1 parent in asexual reproduction. For sexual reproduction, you have your parents will be diploid and they'll produce haploid gametes, whereas there are no gametes formed in asexual reproduction, but you make identical daughter cells. In terms of the manner in which cell division occurs, in sexual reproduction you have to use meiosis to make your haploid gametes. In asexual reproduction it's by mitosis. So remember, we've said mitosis is a form of cloning, so that's why you're getting identical daughter cells. In sexual reproduction, the gametes need to fuse to form the diploid zygote, so that's the retention of your number of chromosomes between parent and offspring. The advantage of having gametes is that you will get huge variation in your offspring. Whereas in asexual reproduction, they are going to be genetically identical offspring, and as we mentioned earlier, a form of cloning. So in your table on page 174, there should be a row for each of the 5 bullet points that are listed here. So if you need to pause and make sure that you have those notes written in, please do. The next thing I asked was, could you now label the structure of the plant first and foremost, and we will talk a little bit about the functions then. So going through them numerically, number 1 at the top obviously has to be your petal, usually brightly colored, can be absent or can be green if you're wind pollinated. Number 2 over here has 2 parts to it, and I refer to these guys as the boy bits. So you have a stamen, which is composed of the anther on top and a stalk, which is called the filament. We then go to the green leaves that are at the base of a plant, and this is called a sepal, and its job is it protects the flower while it's in bud, before it blooms. 6 down here is definitely going to be something that's new. It's called a receptacle, and this is essentially supports the floral parts of your flower. Number 7 is an ovule. So if you can think of ovule, ovary in terms of female reproductive parts, then that might be helpful. And then that brings us to the female reproductive parts. So number 8, you can see, has 3 parts to it. So these are the girl bits. It's called, the 3 bits together are called the carpel, and they are made working backwards: ovary, style, and stigma. So you'd have definitely done these when we did junior cycle science, so you need to update yourself on them. In terms of then just the functions of these things, so the petal, first and foremost, brightly coloured, main reason is to attract insects, and as we've said, it's absent or green in wind pollinated plants. The sepals, so that's the green leaves at the bottom of the flower, will protect your flower when it's in bud. Your receptacle supports your floral parts at this point. Your stamen are the boy bits, so that includes the filament and the anther, and this is the little picture here is showing you from a lily, And if we were in class, I would have had a bunch of lilies hopefully blooming. But the filament is essentially a stalk. Its role is to bring glucose and water to the anther because cells there are going to need energy, and it has a supporting role for your anther. So the anther is the little bulby bit on top, and it produces pollen grains. We then go to the girl bits, and there's 3 parts to them. The stigma on top, the style is this stalky bit, and the ovary at the bottom. So the stigma, its job is to receive pollen. The style, when we get into fertilization, a pollen tube will grow down through this so the pollen can get to the ovary, and the ovary is where 1 or more ovules are produced, and they'll be needed for fertilization and will eventually become the seed, which will be contains the embryo. So that's all for this section. It's up to you now to make sure that your notes for page 174 are in place, and I will see you in Zoom for the formation of the male and female gametes. Talk soon.